Direct from the web, it's Billy Masters Live. And now, please welcome your host, Billy Masters.
Do this late. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Billy Masters Live. Of course, I am your host, Billy Masters, and today is Thursday, June 4th, 2020. See, I know what day it is because it's on the screen. We have a great show for you today. We have a jam-packed show for you today. And but I have to start by telling you about upcoming shows. Next Tuesday, our tribute to Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers' birthday would be next Monday. So on Tuesday, we're going to have a show. We're going to have, oh my God, who are we having? We're having foremost Joan Rivers impersonator. And Joan Rivers sued him once. Frank Marino is going to be here. Charles Bush, who worked with Joan on a play and was a very good friend of Joan. Jackie Beat, who was a writer for Joan Rivers. Me, of course. She was my mentor, and I wrote for her as well. And other special guests. So you'll want to come in next Tuesday. And then next Thursday, it would be the kickoff to LA Pride. So we are having a virtual Pride next Thursday. And I will be co-hosted. The co-host for the show will be Mama. Mama and I co-hosted LA Pride 7 years, I think, in a row. I think it was a record for them. We're also going to have some of the people who were behind the scenes at LA Pride and some performers. So you won't want to miss next Thursday's show. Also, I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to do this wrong. This side. Okay. See this little button over here that says subscribe? You can't see it if you're on Facebook. Go to YouTube. There's a button there. Click it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us a great deal. If you're watching on Facebook, go to YouTube and go to Billy Masters TV and subscribe to our channel. As a matter of fact, do it now. I'll wait. Is it in yet? Okay. Lastly, we are too busy. Billy Masters International is just too busy. I am only one man. I can handle several men, but I'm only one man. So we need a social media assistant to just keep up with everything. So if you know what the fuck you're doing on social media and can help us, I'd call it a job, but that would imply this pay. There is remuneration. I don't know if it would be cash. Email me, billy@billymasters.com. Our first guest, I usually do a monologue here. We'll do the monologue in a minute. My first guest is the publisher of South End News and Bay Windows magazine in Boston. She is also an anchor on NECN, NBC's news channel here in New England. She's also one of my bosses. And she has hosted Boston Pride many times in the past. I think the Youth Pride, if I'm not mistaken. One of my favorite people in the whole world, Miss Sue O'Connell.
Hello, Billy. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Pride,
you.
all prides. I don't have my mug.
Fuck you and your mug. See, already I would have been off of NBC.
Forgot my prop.
Sue O'Connell had a show that
I did. Got canceled, but not fired. Canceled, not fired.
Yeah. And she would often say the opinions of Billy Masters do not reflect the network, me, sometimes not even me. But anyway, I have our mugs. So see,
good,
look,
okay,
it's available for purchase. There I am.
There I am.
Askance. Anyway, Sue, what's happening in Boston, your neck of the woods?
Well, you know, it is a heavy day today with the funeral of George Floyd. And in Boston, we've had a number of protests and marches. We had a big march on Sunday, which was
right near your house, wasn't it?
Yeah, right. 95%, 99% of it was peaceful. Marched down into the city from Dudley, Nubian Square to the State House. And then unfortunately at the end there were, it's pretty clear there are folks either waiting for things to disrupt or disrupting things on purpose. So we did have, unfortunately, some looting and rioting at the end of it in the South End and the Back Bay. So again, overwhelmingly positive day, marred at the end by folks who were disruptive. And then last Tuesday night, we had another Black Lives Matter rally at Franklin Park, and this is in the historically Black neighborhoods of Mattapan, Roxbury, Dorchester. Again, thousands and thousands of people showed up, no problems whatsoever. Again, a positive outpouring. And then yesterday at Boston Common, there were thousands of people who showed up. As you know, Billy, Boston has a troubling, not so great reputation when it comes to race relations and treatment of minorities, African Americans, and Blacks. But many in the community are looking at this opportunity to pay tribute to George Floyd and to work toward ending police brutality and towards equity. So there is a mood, I think, in Boston that hopefully we're going to get through this and we'll come out better on the other side. But again, we also still have, as everyone else does, the pandemic that we're dealing with. And there's concern that although it looked like there was a lot of folks, almost all of them wearing masks, not social distancing, but wearing masks during the protests and demonstrations. But we're worried that this community, which has been unfortunately impacted most negatively by COVID, we're hoping doesn't now have in the 5 to 14 to 21 day window an uptick in COVID infections. So, it's a troubling time and a heavy time, I think, here in Boston.
You know, I was speaking Tuesday to John Duran, who is a West Hollywood city councilor and former mayor. And while I'm a Bostonian, and you know this, I also live in Los Angeles most of the year. And the riots that happened Saturday night, which were very scary, those were happening right in my neighborhood in the Fairfax district. And down my street, the little residential street, screeching tires, policemen. And I think it's really important for people to delineate between protesters who are peaceful by and large and the rioters who are opportunists in seizing this mayhem for their own personal gain.
Yeah, and the agitators. There's also folks that are showing up or people who don't understand what's happening and are showing up and doing things that no one is asking them to do.
Right.
You know, there's enough videos available of white people going up writing BLM in spray paint on Starbucks, and people are like, we're not asking you to do that. Just be supportive and don't start trouble that we don't need trouble for. So yeah, it very clearly is these two different groups. You know, the chaotic sociopath agitator of the world exist in every community and exist everywhere. And I grew up in Revere, so I'm not surprised when I hear reports that there may be people parked in vans waiting near the end of protests for something to happen so that they can go steal things. I mean, this is an unfortunate aspect of human behavior. But, like I said, we've had 2 in a row now that have been peaceful and meaningful, and hopefully we can continue forward with those types of demonstrations, and people can keep opening their eyes and becoming aware of the problem of police brutality, which is one of this oppression which Blacks and African Americans have been dealing with for 400 years. So I'm sorry you can't get a haircut, but
that's all right. It's looking cute though.
It is, but we've got these important issues that we are dealing with and grappling with, hopefully in a way that will move forward positively.
How are you dealing with things reopening? Because I remember when this started, and it's been now almost 3 months. And I was against everything. Like, I didn't want to go to a supermarket. I didn't want to get takeout. I wasn't best friends, siblings I wasn't going near. And everybody on Memorial Day, which you and I had predicted, Memorial Day, I woke up and I got a call from a friend who was at Macy's. And I'm like, what happened? Are you risking life and limb to go to Macy's? So how are you dealing with things opening up? Are you going to things? Has any normalcy occurred? No.
No, I mean, look, and I'm lucky enough and privileged enough that I can work from home, right? And my kid goes to school online and has been doing that for years. The person we live with can work from home. And I'm the one that's sort of the least likely to be negatively impacted if I get COVID. So I'm the one that goes out to the store. I'm the one but I try and limit it. And when I'm there, I do my best to practice at least 6 feet, and I'm always wearing a mask and washing my face. I'm not like washing down the groceries when I bring them in. I'm not at that point. And I'm trying to, I did at the beginning, but I'm trying to pay close attention to the science, right? And the facts and what we know. We've been studying almost every other disease for decades. We've been studying the flu since the 5th century, right? So this is an evolving science that we have to pay attention to. And I'm not so worried about surfaces as I was before, but I'm not going to let my guard down. I mean, this is like we're not even in the second quarter of the game here. I'm not going to get taken down because I took my mask off to go talk to someone that I don't like, that I don't want to talk to anyway.
No,
in a store I don't want to be in. How about that? I'm not going to go down doing something with somebody I don't want to be with. I'm just not going to do it.
Which would basically be
not
anybody.
going to do it.
No, I know.
I don't want to talk to anybody.
Okay, so now today, I think, now I'm not sure, you'll correct me. God
I
knows.
will. That's all I do, actually, every morning.
Oh,
on Tuesday morning when I get the Billy Masters column.
No, that she doesn't correct. It's when we used to co-host 1 in 10 together, and she's like, "No, that is wrong. You cannot say that." Would today have been the raising of the flag, or is it tomorrow?
No, tomorrow is Friday. Boston Pride kicks off tomorrow, and there is going to be a flag raising. Everything is virtual for Boston Pride this year. If you go to bostonpride.org, the flag raising is at noon Eastern Standard Time. You can watch it. City Hall, Boston City Hall, the first municipal building in the country that allowed and continues to celebrate Pride with a Pride flag. And then all week there are events. There's also tomorrow a book reading, I think, a Q&A with the author of The Deviance War. And then on Monday night, I am virtually hosting a virtual panel. I'm not sure which adjectives or adverbs to use. The LGBTQ Veterans Panel discussion, which happens Monday night at 6 with a number of vets who come on to talk about their experiences both in the service and out of the service, and how the community responds to people who are in military. Pride Lights, you remember Pride Lights?
I do.
In the South End, we had a tree in the South End, and we put pink lights on it, and we made an event out of it. And it was always so compelling when the light would get lit that it's like, oh, it's a tree with pink lights.
And people would applaud. We remember that.
We're doing that virtually, and that's on Tuesday. And then there's a concert with Fast Freddy is hosting some sort of concert, musical concert, and there's a virtual dance. So, Pride is doing their best to keep people connected, and I know that they've got some information up on the solidarity with Black Lives Matter to make sure that although we're celebrating Pride, which of course I know all your viewers know started with a riot.
Yeah,
call it an uprising if you want. I'm calling it a riot. Pride started with a riot, and here we are with our corporate sponsors today. So, it's all good, I guess. But, just trying to keep the right balance of seriousness with what's happening in our communities at large and within our community, as well as just noting that this is the 50th anniversary of Boston Pride.
Yes, so, Los Angeles too.
Yeah, so, marking that 1-year anniversary after Stonewall, when a few folks gathered, brave folks gathered with no corporate sponsorship.
That is correct.
In Boston.
Wells Fargo wasn't even there.
No banks, no kindergartens, no Montessori's. They were just out there on their own. So.
Just drag queens and pumps, and thank God we've got some today. I also want to just point out, this really has nothing to do with this, but since you mentioned Black Lives Matter. So when I started this show, Billy Masters Live, it was hashtag BML, but Black Lives Matter was BLM. Yeah. And somebody pointed out, they may think that you're mixed up or making fun of it. So now we're BM Live. And
there you go, BM Live.
Which
also stands for bowel movement in the so there you go. So you're going.
You know what? There's only so much I can control, Sue O'Connell. Sue, I love you. Baywindows.com. Baywindows.com.
Yeah, baywindows.com. That's it.
Check out we're still publishing. We're out on Thursday.
Come
out Thursdays.
We're out on Thursdays with our Pride edition. So check it out.
Cool. Sue O'Connell, thank you. We'll be touching base. You're like a regular. We'll see you in like a couple of weeks.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Happy Pride, Billy.
Thanks, sweetheart. Happy Pride to you too. Bye-bye. Oh my God, what a show. Okay, so I'm going to just tell a very quick anecdote. I have been close to drag queens more. I am a big believer that drag queens and female impersonators and anybody who is perceived as different are really the heroes in our community, because they're the ones that really lead the way. And I have hosted shows primarily with drag queens. They love to get a boy and drag, or a boy and a lesbian. Like there's all sorts of mix up. So let me just, I just found a photo. And the other thing is, when you're in between big drag queens, you look so much thinner. Now, this was the one day I had abs, and that's Jasmine on the left and Mama on the right. And Mama is going to be hosting LA Pride with me next Thursday. But my first guest, when people say he wrote the book on drag, he actually did. Frank DeCaro. Look, Frank, look at us. Frank DeCaro and I have known each other for a million years. Of course, you guys know him from numerous television appearances. His show, which used to be on Sirius XM's OutQ, now defunct. He has written books. He is he's an expert on everything, frankly. He's one of the funniest people I know, and he did write a book called Drag, Combing Through the Big Wigs of Show Business. Please welcome my real official first guest, Frank DeCaro.
Hello.
Hi,
so
honey.
Happy to be here with you. And I did write the book on drag, and every one of your guests except Sue is in the book. So I'm relieved to say, because sometimes I feel guilty when I'll be interviewing someone and they are, they're not in the book because they either their big moment was after it went to press or whatever. But the legends that you're presenting today, everyone is in the book, and they deserve to be because they're the superstars.
And I should bring up that Frank is going to be back with us on Thursday, June 25th, because today we have legendary drag queens, really ones that paved the way for the modern age of drag. And then on the 25th, we're having people that come out of the RuPaul tradition. And so,
and some of the best people. So
yeah. So
yes.
I remember you and we were sitting at Jeffrey Epstein's Christmas party, not the dead Jeffrey Epstein, the other Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
And the Disney Jeffrey Epstein.
The one we love, yes.
The one we love. And it was maybe 2 years before the book came out, and you said, I have this idea for a book about drag. And I said, like drag queens? Like, no, the history, an encyclopedic volume, because people don't know their history. And I thought that was fascinating.
Well, I feel that way. The last 3 books I did 2 dead celebrity cookbooks, and now Drag, Combing Through the Big Wigs of Show Business. And the one thing they have in common is that they sprang out of my need to keep the memory alive of those who've gone before, and also to let people know that this book was that drag didn't begin with season 1 of RuPaul's Drag Race. And that is not to diminish the impact of RuPaul's Drag Race. I adore that show. What is it about? It's on some of those Fridays.
Every night.
It was about 18 hours on a Friday. You're like, well, we'll just sit here until the couch breaks, and you'd watch it all. But
you were ahead of the curve, because when we talked about this, and I said, there's this RuPaul show and blah, blah, blah. Literally in the next year, it exploded to the point that you were ready to go to press to ride that wave, but you had really been ahead of that.
Well, Rizzoli Books came to me 5 or 6 years ago now, and they said, someone needs to write a book on drag, and I think it should be you, is what the editor said. And I honestly was not sure that I was the right person. And then I thought about it, and I thought, okay, I've never really done drag in earnest. I mean, I played a female role in a web series, and I've, done other stuff, but I'm certainly not a drag queen. But I like drag hag #1, and I have been, I think, since I was 4 years old, and I saw Herman Munster get hit by a bolt of electricity and turn into a cocktail waitress, and barrel curls, and he was sort of the head wig of the Angry Inch of Mockingbird Heights, on the show. But I've gotten to see the legends, true legends of drag. And I mean, even Milton Berle, at an occasion and in a dress, and Flip Wilson and Sylvester and Divine, and have seen them all live, and also to truly follow the career of the greatest people still practicing today. I mean, I used to see Lypsinka in clubs, I think this was the Tunnel.
Little clubs, yeah. Right.
And at the first time you laid eyes on Lypsinka, you were like, oh my God, you're astoundingly good. And so, and then you get scared. You count the years, how long it's been since you started following someone's career and admiring them. And you realize it's been decades. And it was the same way with Charles Busch and the late Charles Pierce. And so many of the people I wrote about, I'd admired for decades. So it was easy. I realized, I am the right guy to write this book. And so that's how it all happened. Then I had the best thing happen. I was a year late in turning in the manuscript, and it turned out to be perfect because it was the right time to have the book come out, because I take too long to do everything. And so thank heaven for my being a year late and turning the book in. It came out at exactly the right moment last year when RuPaul was winning Emmys and everything. It was the moment. And I think
go ahead.
I was going to say that I think the book is a success because it wasn't my idea in the first place. I think sometimes my ideas are for 6 people and I'm 3 of them, So, but this was a more mainstream hit than I've ever had. So I'm very excited.
I have gone. What I've loved is when you started when the book first came out, you were doing these. I can't even call them book readings because they were shows. They were actual shows in libraries, in bookstores, in theaters, even. And you got so many of the performers to join you. And at the end of the show, I felt like I had gotten a crash course. And I went to at least 2 of them and then saw some online, which people can look on YouTube. And some of them, I remember the Grove one was great. And the Santa Monica Library. Oh, there were so many. Chicago.
We did the Chicago Humanities Festival.
That was amazing.
The Guthrie Theater we did in Minneapolis.
Right.
Peace out to everyone in Minneapolis. So, it was amazing. And the nice thing about it is you could call people who were the giants in the biz, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, I could do it that night. And then it's not only would they show up, many of them would show up in full drag. And it's that's a commitment. I mean, that's a lot to ask somebody. I have to shave and shower and put aqua velva on and I'm ready to go, But it's like when you have to take 2 or 3 hours to get ready, to paint your face and look exquisite and then get yourself, probably driving yourself to the Grove or, or
during daylight.
So in daylight. Yeah, exactly. And so I really was amazed. I think people did it not only because they know my heart is in the right place in wanting to do this book, but even more than that, it's because, and I didn't know this going in because I loved it so much, drag artistry has not been taken as seriously as it deserves to be. And it's kind of, when Bruce Valanche, I'm going to name drop, wrote the foreword to the book, and he did the first panel with me at the Grove. When he wrote this, he talked about how drag history and often gay history is pushed to the margins or traditionally has been pushed to the margins. And I think people were glad to be taken seriously. And I think, unfortunately, that's still the case with a lot of the mainstream media. I'm doing an online digital drag show. We were taking a little time off because my producers are Minneapolis based. So we're Flip Phone Events said, let's take a little bit of time off. So we're going to take a week or 2 off. But one of the people I had on there was what's known as an AFAB queen. And that means assigned female at birth. And it's someone who, in the old days, would have said it's a girl who does drag, but it's an AFAB queen. And she wrote to me after the interview, and she said that was by far the best interview because usually a drag queen is brought on to sprinkle glitter on whatever program it is.
Right.
And they're not there to talk about their lives, their artistry, their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations. And she said, you were asking me about being an artist. And she said, we don't get those interviews that often. It's it's by the mainstream. You and I talk about the artistry. But, if you're going to go on, a local morning show, the drag queen is going to be the fairy who brings the glitter dust, and is not going to be asked their political opinions, how they feel about living in quarantine,
or the craft
matter, etc. They're they're jesters and
Yeah.
not the follow. And yes, we all are comedians and entertainers. That's what we do. But we also have lives, and we can turn on a dime and be deadly serious about something.
Right.
You know, and so
Well, I have to say, I've
So-
run into that because when this show has been primarily fun, obviously, but 2 weeks ago I had Gloria Allred on for the hour, which
Sure.
was fascinating to me, and so many fans were like, well, this wasn't very funny. And I'm like, well, you know, I can talk about other things. And it was important things. But I think that, you know, everybody is put, like you just said, everybody is put in a box. And it's funny because when I sit and talk to you, and God knows we laugh. And we dish and whatever, but we can also talk about serious things. And all of the performers that we have today certainly are artists in their own way. Some of them are more vocal artists, some of them are more actors, some of them are more complete performance or writers. And what I found interesting about your book was the historical context that you put it in, because we know there's a long tradition of males playing female roles in theaters, but we don't know of a long tradition of actual drag performers, which is different.
Right. Yeah, the shocking thing, and it came out of an interview, one of my earliest interviews. Well, I think my first was Hedda Lettuce. My second was John Epperson, Lypsinka. My third was Charles Busch. I think that was right. And they're all huge and as talented can be. And Charles Busch said to me, he was telling me stories about drag history, and he was like, oh my God, you have to find out more about this person. And the shock for me was there was a performer named Julian Eltinge, who I should have known going in, and of course I didn't, but I know who he is now. But he was given his own Broadway theater. It's on 42nd Street. It's a multiplex now, right near the Port Authority in New York. The facade is, she's still giving good facade, okay? But she's, but she was given her own Broadway theater in 1912.
I mean,
108 years ago,
right,
there was the Julian Eltinge Theater on Broadway. And so that's kind of astounding to me. So, and you know, you don't get a Broadway theater because 12 gays are, you know, with drink tickets are coming to see you. I mean, that's like, you're a popular hit. And I was finding things and doing the research for the book, and it would be held over 9th week, Fort Worth, Texas, the Turnabout Review, you know, and you'd be like, it's 1964 and you're going into your 9th week in Fort Worth with a drag show. So I think that what's really changed is that drag performers are allowed to, and I think I do give credit to RuPaul's Drag Race for this. We're seeing behind the mascara for the first time.
Right.
You used to be the guy would take that wig off at the end. So
and go, ha ha. Right.
Yes, because then the straight guys in the audience who had the hots, their chubby would go down so they could leave and stand up and walk out.
Would it?
I think that's what it was for. It was sort of, see, don't be fooled, you know, and then guys would be, ooh, boner killer. And then they would get up and they could leave. But, you know, I do think that drag queens are allowed to have a full life. And in the media, obviously they had full lives in real life. But I mean, in the media, they're allowed to have full lives. And we're allowed to see them. You know, and you know what? That's why we cry during Drag Race. That's why it wins Emmys, not just because it's entertaining, but you're sitting there watching these confessional videos, or here comes mom's Skype call, and you're weeping with it because we all want to be, you know, and want to be accepted for who we are by our parents, whether we want to admit it or not. That was always something most of us desired.
Right. You
either got it if you were lucky like me, ultimately, you know, even though it was tough for a while, but my folks came around and loved me and loved my husband even more. Oh, they're crazy about him. But
well, it's funny because you mentioned that in Drag Race, so many of the people talk about that first moment where it did turn around for them, that A, they found their voice to express who they were, and B, that someone heard that voice. And I love those stories because it is something that is universal, whether you're a drag queen, whether you're gay, whether you're Black, whether you're Asian, everybody has a moment where they were heard and they were accepted, or they don't, which is even more tragic.
Right. And and I think that for those people, they're given hope by hearing about the people for whom it did all come around, and they did find acceptance, or even if it wasn't acceptance, they found acceptance in their chosen family. You know, even if their biological family never came around, there are so many stories of, well, screw you, I'm going to go create my own
Make
family.
my own family, right?
And
of course, we
that's
know about
inspiring.
drag houses.
Yeah. And I was going to say, we were talking about drag history. The people who are particularly good drag artists, and every person on your show today is the best at what they do. They're not
Absolutely
in the top 5. They're not. They are.
They're number one.
Lypsinka is the best lip sync artist you're ever going to see. There might be some who approach her, but there's nobody better. No one. There is no Barbra impersonator better than Steven Brinberg, and no one can pull more
Marilyn.
voices out of their hat.
And Marilyn, mistaken for Marilyn. We'll get to that, but like his photo was used in lieu of Marilyn in events. Shocking. I know. Well, let's get to some of the guests. So I'm going to actually use the same order you use. See, I'm stealing from you again, Frank.
Dude, I'm going to reach for my coffee. I got very jealous.
Yeah, that's all right. I know. Look, it's a nightmare being so prepared. Oh, look
my tiki mug, too.
I love it. Okay, our first performer is probably one of the first. I can't even call her a drag queen because it's an artiste. This is an artiste who I saw in the theater that people had said, oh, this person lip syncs. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. I've been to bars. It's not to call it lip syncing is to denigrate it. It is an art form. It is a full theatrical experience. Dancing, acting, everything. Here's a photo of the fabulous Lypsinka. Oh, I love her. And I'm going to just show a clip quickly before we go to bring her on. Where is a clip? I know there's a clip somewhere. Okay. I think this is kind of classic Lypsinka. When you think of Lypsinka, you think of this.
Barbra, please. Please, Barbra. Leave us alone, Barbra. If you need anything, ask Carol Ann.
What a good idea.
She's my daughter. She's my sister. She's my daughter. She's my sister. She's my sister and my daughter.
Why I'm not teaching logic at Columbia, I'll never know.
Barbra, please.
You dragged me into bed. I didn't drag you. You took me. You woman hater. You Jew hater. You fascist swine. You're so weak and frightened, it's pathetic.
Back. Okay, hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Has disappeared, but that's okay. We'll get it back. That was, of course, the classic Lypsinka telephone sequence, and I am proud, pleased, and honored to have John Epperson, Lypsinka. Hi, John.
Hi, Billy. Hi, Frank.
Hi, John.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. John, is the telephone bit like the classic Lypsinka moment?
Well, it's the moment that people seem to remember the most. So if that means classic, then yeah.
How did that come up? The idea of the phones?
I had a recording that came out in the 80s. It was vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 2 records in one album. Pink vinyl. It was called Va Va Voom. That was the name of the album. And there was a picture of Jane Mansfield on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And the first recording on the album is a recording of Jane Mansfield performing a tune called That Makes It, that was in a movie she made with Mamie Van Doren called Las Vegas Hillbillies. And the very first thing you hear in the recording is the ring. And then you hear the pickup sound, pick up, and you hear Jane say, hello. And I thought, well, I could use that. And that's how it started.
John, what I love is that, and I said this before, it's almost to say drag artist almost diminishes it, because how you use your body, your angularness, you're almost balletic, almost choreographed. It seems to me that you have to really have a strong acting ability and dance ability, and really a great ear, musicality. Does everything work together when you put your shows together?
Yes, absolutely. And you guys were using the term drag queen, which is kind of semi-famously known that I don't like that term.
Right.
For all kinds of reasons.
What term do you like?
Well, why not
performer?
Just say actor?
Yeah, performer. Actor. And also because it is a full performance.
Well, one of the reasons I don't like the term drag queen is, to me, Lypsinka is a woman. Just like Barry Humphries is a man and Dame Edna is a woman. I am not there to remind the audience that I'm a man in a dress. I'm there to portray a woman. Someone like Lady Bunny, however, does remind you she's a man in a dress. Lady Bunny is okay with the term drag queen. Also, the term drag queen has been used disparagingly over the years. It's been directed in my direction by gay people as a disparaging remark. Mm-hmm. But back to the artistic part, yes, I am a trained classical musician, so musicianship has a lot to do with it. I am not really trained as a dancer, but I've been around a lot of dancers. And I've never really been trained as an actor. I always say I went to acting school by watching the Carol Burnett show. But it is all of those things, all at once and more.
And we should point out that you also acted, because we have a photo of you in Black Swan, correct?
Yeah,
and you were a pianist, the rehearsal pianist there.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to move to New York was to work at American Ballet Theater, to get a job there as a pianist, and that did happen. But before I moved to New York, I had seen a movie called The Turning Point about
Anne Bancroft, Shirley MacLaine, sure.
And it used a lot of dancers from American Ballet Theater, and I thought, oh, I'll get a job there, and then I'll meet Herbert Ross, who directed The Turning Point, and he'll put me in the movies. Well, that didn't happen, but he did try. Herbert Ross and I did meet. He came to a performance in Los Angeles in '95, and he tried to get a movie made with me and Whoopi Goldberg and Daryl Hannah. It was going to be the Hollywood remake of Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown.
Oh, wow.
But that didn't happen. However, how many years later, 15 years later, I was finally in a ballet film, Black Swan.
Frank, how did you two meet?
I started going to see Lypsinka perform, and I do think the one I remember was it Tunnel, maybe back in, I mean, we're talking late 80s. I moved to New York in '88, and then I would see Lypsinka at Wigstock, and you just knew you were in the presence of greatness, and it's I mean, not to always be blowing smoke, John, but my admiration for you is in the sentence in the book where I said, to say that Lypsinka lip syncs is like saying Picasso paint. It's just the best there is, and no one makes me laugh harder. And to find out now after all these years that you're not dance trained or acting trained, or this good, without that, I'm blown away even after all these years. But I had Life cereal this morning, which I always think of you, because there's a moment in one of your early shows where you took out a box of Life with Mikey on it and said, this is me, this is me. And I think of that every morning when I have my cereal. So you're getting my brain forever, John.
I have to admit, I stole that bit from another drag performer who I saw at the old 4-Star on Santa Monica Boulevard. Do you remember that bar?
We do. Oh, I do.
I don't, but I was in New
I'm
York
older.
at that point. Yes.
You know, what I love is that it's not just even the performance and the ability. There's an enormous amount of research and writing that goes into these shows. And I've always found that the best performers do an enormous amount of preparation and research and really finding something very specific or obscure. Was that part of your incentive to just not do the same old thing, find something new?
Yes, and part of that was because I thought, well, if the audience doesn't know what this is or who the speaker or singer is, then they might more readily believe it's coming out of my mouth.
Right.
But that was only part of it. It was also a desire to educate the audience.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have heard people complain that it's too obscure. But my response to that is, the first time the world heard the score to Oklahoma was the first time the world heard the score to Oklahoma. What's wrong with hearing something new?
Right. And I think you've really educated a whole generation of not only a style of cabaret performance that is gone, but people like the Dolores Grays and Lisa Kirks and people who maybe weren't readily accessible to the general audience, but should be.
Well, that's absolutely true. When I first saw Dolores Gray on the screen, I was knocked out because she was Ethel Merman, but prettier and sexier. And I had never heard of her.
Right.
And I thought to myself, and it was a movie called It's Always Fair Weather. It was playing at the Regency Theater in New York, where I am right now on Broadway, just north of Lincoln Center. I went because Gene Kelly and Sid Charisse were in it. I didn't know I was going to see someone named Dolores Gray. And I thought to myself, okay, so a lot of performers, they impersonate Cher or Barbra Streisand or Liza or Bette Midler. I'm going to impersonate someone that people aren't so familiar with. I'm going to impersonate this woman, whatever her name is. And then I found out it was Dolores Gray.
Well, I think that you've done a great service to these people by keeping them alive and also creating a whole new character with yourself.
Well, a lot of people on social media have told me that they thanked me for introducing them to Dolores Gray.
Well, and I saw Dolores Gray towards the end of her career, and I have to say I appreciated her even more because of you.
Thank you.
Well, we're gonna keep you there, John. So I'm gonna move you away for a second, but we're gonna get to everyone first on their own. Okay, Frank, you ready for the next one?
I'm very ready.
Okay, our next guest is probably, as Frank said, the best of the best Barbra Streisand impersonators. And again, we're not talking an impersonator like just shows up and goes oucha magoucha. We're talking about an entire performance in the way that what was his name who used to do the Barbra show? He did Barbra and then he did Liza too. Didn't he date Liza? Who was that?
Jim Bailey.
Jim Bailey, thank you.
Yeah.
Who I had seen one night did Barbra and one night did Judy. And I'm like, what in the name of God is this? But then I will say that I've never seen anyone better than Steve Brinberg, who does Simply Barbra. And we have a little clip of him in action. So here we go.
I'm back in Brooklyn, back on Flatbush Avenue after 40 years. Let's take a walk and see what's changed. Smiles we gave to one another for the way we were. Hello, how you doing? I'm fine. I love your glasses. This is it. Erasmus High School. This is where I went in the 50s. I spent 4 years in this building, and here I am again. I was in the school with Neil Diamond. We were in the choir together. I always knew he was going to be famous, and he always knew I was going to be famous. It's great to be here with all these wonderful people who need Brooklyn are the luckiest people in the world. I'm back in Brooklyn.
a little taste of Barbra. The great Steve Brinberg joins us now. Hey, Steven.
Hi. Hi, guys.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Can I just say Barbra would kill to be that thin? I'll just tell you right now.
Well, she doesn't walk as much as I do, you know, and even if you walk around the compound that she lives on, it's not as much as like having New York City to walk through.
Oh, don't tempt her. She'll buy her own New York City.
And put it in the basement.
Yeah, right, exactly, in the mall. And we should say that the play Buyer and Seller that Michael Urie did is about the guy who lives in her basement retail area, or works there, not lives there. Frank, how did you meet Steven?
Well, we had crossed paths in New York, but when I sat down to do this book, there was no which Barbra person should I look for to focus on for the book. It was just, you know, who has Steven's email and how fast can I get him to answer my questions? And it was that was an easy call. That was not a you know, I was not weighing anything. It was just how fast can I get Steven? Because I mean, his reputation is burnished and polished and borne out over decades of performing. No, you know, people don't. Not a lot of disagreement about who's the best at performing as Barbra. There are other impersonators by
as Barbra live. There's a lot of women who sing as Barbra live, but not men. Not
you know, Steven, I have seen you perform live many times, and the voice is uncanny. And again, what notices me, what grabs me is the phrasing. It's the real attention to detail that, say, a musician will hear. Did you come into this as from a musical or vocal aspect first?
Well, I studied piano for a number of years as a kid, but I didn't really stick with it. And the rest of it was just sort of natural, instinctive. I'm very musical. I can play, in addition to what I learned, I can play by ear with just one hand. I can't figure out the left hand. But I have a really great ear. So I can hear like a song once, and like 2 years later, I remember that melody. I really would like to compose a musical someday. And listening to Barbra, you know, my whole life, when I started doing this in the 90s, I didn't actually go back and research it at all. It was all, it's in my head, and it's still in my head. So when I sing a song, for example, that she's never done, I know exactly how she would go for this note and how she would do that. And more than once, I've sung a song that she hasn't done, and then she eventually did it, and it was almost note for note. It's weird.
So we know musically, how did you come into the visual aspect of the character? Did you think to yourself there were similarities, or did you have to do a lot of makeup work?
Yeah, I mean, I was singing as me and doing other voices too before I ever decided to do a whole Barbra show. And I certainly wouldn't look in the mirror still and say, oh, he looks just like Barbra Streisand, you know, no. Maybe like younger Matthew Broderick or middle range Russell Crowe I've gotten. So, and then when I did decide to do it, that's what sort of made me hesitate for a while, because I thought, I'm not a makeup artist, as anyone who's seen me could tell you. But even if I hire people, I just don't know that there's that much of a resemblance. But because I had the voice and the attitude and the personality down, I thought this is worth exploring. And then once I started doing it, you know, I've been doing it ever since.
And when was that? When did you start?
It was 93 was the first show. And the funny thing is, I scheduled a couple of shows, not even knowing if it was something I want to keep doing. And literally a month after I did those shows, she decided to come back and do concerts again. And her life started feeding my life as her on stage. Whatever would happen to her would go into the show, and still does. If she has a movie, if she has an album, if she said something to the press, it's all fodder. It's very handy doing somebody who's very much alive and well, as opposed to, let's say, Judy or someone you have to deal with their life as it happened. I mean, you could still invent stuff, but you know, Barbra is here forever, you know, and I'll always be young enough to be her son, no matter how either of us gets. So.
And you'll always be younger than her. Frank, you've interviewed so many people. Do the people have to be fans of the person they are portraying?
I think they have to have a tremendous respect for it. Otherwise, it leaves the audience with sort of a distaste after they've seen it. It feels a little, if they don't love who they're celebrating, it comes off as shady rather than respectful. And it's not to say that someone like Steven doesn't have fun with Barbra, but I think that you have to love. I mean, that's an old John Waters rule. You know, you have to love what you lampoon, and if you do it with love, even if you're really nailing them in a way that's hilarious, if it's done with love, the audience will be in your pocket. And if it's not done with love, I think you end up seeming like a bitchy queen. You know, Steven, does that seem true or?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly approach it with great love, though I have had a few people in the audience come who didn't love Barbra, and they said, what did somebody say once? I hated her for 20 years until tonight.
Oh, wow.
That's really interesting. Like I made them go back and revisit what they, reassess her again and become a fan after seeing me, which I thought
it's interesting that they would come to the show if they didn't like her.
Well, I mean, I guess they heard it was really good. And I always have a little bit in the show where I do other voices, just a little bit of Cher and other people like that. So like, even if you had no interest in Barbra, which it does seem strange why you would come, as long as you knew who she was, you would get something out of it. If you like musical comedy, and it's fun. It's a fun show.
You know what I loved? I was talking to everyone backstage before the show started. I have had so much fun putting this show together because basically I got to sit on YouTube and look at all of your performances, including you, Frank, because I really want to, there are the obvious questions and the obvious things. But Steven, what I didn't know about you is that you have actually performed with a lot of people as Barbra.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, I mean, I've had a lot of guest people singing over the years, like Audra McDonald,
which was a great clip. That was my favorite of them.
Which one?
Because Audra was so much fun because she went with it and gave you Diva for Diva.
Oh, she was great. She's amazing. Had a great time with her.
Who did you not like working with?
What's that?
Who did you not like working with? Who didn't get it?
God, that's a good question. I can't really think. I mean, I can think of someone I didn't like working with, but that's off the air. There's because that person actually got it on stage. I think it was just off stage.
They weren't as nice.
Yeah, maybe.
It was Leah Michelle. Let's just say it was Leah Michelle.
Right, we're trashing her all week.
Well, it's funny. She probably would enjoy what I do because she's a Barbra fan. But yeah, she hasn't had a good week.
No, she has not.
She's like up there with the lady in the park and the dog, I think.
Never liked her. No, I have to say, Leah Michelle was always very nice to me. So there you go.
Yeah.
Steven, I'm going to take you off for a second. We're going to go to our next guest, then we'll have you back.
Okay.
Thanks, sweetheart. Okay, Frank, you ready for another one?
Yes.
Okay, so I am a Bostonian, and growing up as a young gay boy, I would see Jimmy James many times in Boston and in Provincetown where I could drive. And I was always flabbergasted because I always thought to myself, that isn't a man. It cannot be a man, because I so believed that he was Marilyn. And I'm going to just show you, this is a clip from, I think, the late 80s or around 1990, vintage Marilyn. Take a look.
Started this way. In such a way that the customers say that I certainly can. Anatomy makes the mercury rise to 93. Tropical evening, in such a way that the moment
That is not Marilyn. That is not Marilyn. I know you think it's Marilyn. It is our guest, Jimmy James. Oh, he's reading. He's catching up on his reading.
He's reading the best book ever.
Oh, my God. And for people who forget, from Rizzoli, drag, coming to the big wigs of show business. Hey, Jimmy James.
Yeah, hi, you guys.
Hi.
This,
Hi,
I want
sweetheart.
to say, is
Oh,
the drag Bible.
it
This
is.
is the drag Bible. There's so much amazing information in here for anyone who's either interested in drag or wanting to do drag or just curious about the subject. This is the book. I'm not
thank
kidding,
you.
and I'm not just saying that. I'm not just saying that because Frank DeCaro is here, but this is the book that I'm going to talk about at my Caftan chat tonight on my Facebook Live. I have several books that I'm talking about, but this is the one I pulled out because it is incredible information about drag all through the history, okay? And so if anyone is interested in drag, not only if you're interested, but it's really entertaining. And
Oh, it's a lot of
kidding.
fun.
I'm so honored to be here with Frank DeCaro. Of course, Billy Masters, you know I love you. And
I
that
love
picture
you.
you had between the two drag queens,
Yeah.
why didn't I know you then?
I don't, oh, Frank, and somebody just emailed me whose eyes are on the cover of the book.
That's Tempest du Jour.
Okay.
The brightest light in Tucson. Yeah, who's a sweet, and he's a dad and everything, and he has an emu named Frank now. He has a baby emu, which will grow to be this giant bird, and he named it Frank. So I hope it's for me. I don't think so. You never know. But I'm honored that Jimmy, that you like the book as much. But who else would I put in the book? I mean, it's you have. There's certain people that there was no debate.
This is a gold mine.
It really is.
A gold mine of information.
Oh, talk about you. Stop.
I mean, it really is, and a lot of my friends are in here, and one of my best friends ever.
Oh, wait, we're going to show that picture. So I want to show this picture. Now, Jimmy, put down the book. And now, look, I've got it right there covering Frank. Now, Jimmy, this was an ad for LA Iworks, correct? Right?
Yeah, for LA Iworks.
Okay,
yeah.
Now, a few years after that ad came out, all of a sudden, a stamp came out honoring Marilyn with the same picture. Now, Jimmy, what is going on? Do people not know the difference between you and the real Marilyn? There it is. Yeah.
This is the stamp that came out in Africa.
Yeah.
And there's the mistake, right?
See, right there, right in the middle over Frank. No, I've got it up, Jimmy. You can put the stamp down.
So it was a little series of like a company put out these African stamps, and then it took like
see,
a
there
couple
you
of
are,
years,
Jimmy.
they found the mistake. Yeah,
Jimmy.
And
so people all over the world have licked the back of your head. Do you realize that?
Oh, he realizes that.
He knows that, yes.
Jimmy, how did you get stuck? First off, what I think so many people owe a great debt of gratitude to you, because you were one of the first drag performers, and again, we'll talk about the terminology, that they saw on national television. And what was that? What is it like being?
I was on Donahue. That was the big. Well, I don't feel like I'm the first, because for me, the first was Jim Bailey. And when I saw Jim Bailey, I think Johnny Carson, something came over me, and I was a little kid. So I was like, oh my God, wait, that's a man playing a woman, because I always looked like a girl. I always sounded like a girl. And I just felt I don't fit in anywhere. And then I saw this work of art, because it is true what you guys were saying. It is drag artists. And I like to say drag artists because the ones who work on their craft and really pay attention to the details, pay attention to the work, and do it well, they are drag artists. And you guys nailed it exactly. But
Right.
I didn't feel like I was the first. But when I came on Donahue, it was May of 1987, and it changed my life. It just changed my life.
I think it changed a lot of people's lives. Because I was, you know, a little young gay boy in a Boston suburb. And I remember that, you know, it's funny, I watched that clip again last night. And somebody asked you, being a heterosexual man, what does your girlfriend or wife think of you performing like that? And you said, I said I didn't have a girlfriend or wife, and just left it at that. Like, you didn't say but it was implied. I went, oh, maybe.
No, I just said I never said that. I danced around the issue.
You did.
Then, first of all, I was in Maryland drag, and I didn't want to come out and say like, oh, well, you know, what bathroom do you use? All the questions they used to ask back then.
Right.
And so it was uncomfortable. You want me to come dressed as Marilyn, and then you want me to answer as Jimmy. It made me feel uncomfortable. So,
and that's actually, you brought up
what I did was
Jimmy, you brought up an interesting point, because a lot of performers, when they are not in drag, will get insulted if you call them by their drag name. You have one name, so you don't have that issue.
Yeah, because I always would say this, and I sounded like a broken record in interviews back then. I would say, well, I'm basically a character actor, because that's what I was doing before I did Marilyn. I would be in plays and college and high school, and I would be a character actor. And
Right.
I thought there was no chance in hell, coming from San Antonio, that I would ever be able to get into show business. So I studied theatrical makeup, and I had a dance scholarship, but I was like, I'm 5'4". Nobody's ever gonna have me as a dancer. So
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing. I was just studying theatrical makeup. I had a dance scholarship. I was just like, I took all the classes in college I took was makeup, music, to radio, TV, film, everything dancing around show business, but never having any real hope to be in show business. But the makeup and the dance classes came in handy when in 1980, about 1980, I was in a bookstore called B. Dalton's. Do y'all remember B. Dalton's?
Yeah, sure.
Bookstores. So I opened a book called Life Goes to the Movies, and I was always a chubby boy my entire life, continuing on with the tradition now, but I had lost a lot of weight. So my face went down so much that I saw a picture of Marilyn. And again, as a makeup artist, I began to see, oh, there's something I could work with. And then it brought me back to Jim Bailey on the Tonight Show.
Mhm.
And I thought, maybe I could make something of this. But you have to know that Marilyn was a little bit before my time. So
Yes.
I didn't really know much about Marilyn. I knew about Sonny and Cher, Diane Ross and the Supremes, and Janis Joplin, and all the, Smokey Robinson, all these kind of people, but I didn't know much about Marilyn. So I started to do research on her, fell in love with her, exactly to what you guys were saying, that I personally, now with my show of impressions, I have to be in love with the artist before I can impersonate them.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not joyful for me. So everybody I impersonate, I'm in love with. So I fell in love with Marilyn, not knowing where it would go. I didn't know people would be like.
Well, there was,
this is
it's
early 80s.
Jimmy, you bring up an interesting point, and Frank, you can actually speak on this. There was no template for drag performers. They were spotty, like we said. There was a Jim Bailey, and a Charles Pierce, but there was not a mainstream swell that people could say, "Oh, I want to do that, and here's how." You had to really make it up as you went along.
Definitely. I was going to say, every person on this show today and every drag artist worth their salt is in love with talent. From the bottom of their soul, they love talent. mega talent. Barbra
Yeah.
Streisand, Marilyn Monroe,
Bigger than life.
Ray, Judy Garland. The people who are the best of it, and then they go and do their research. And I think even if none of us were performing or writing books or hosting talk shows, we would be curious to find out what came before. And I think that what separates everybody, every person on the show was not alive when some of their favorite people in the world had their heyday. There are people who were dead before any of us were born that we're obsessed with, and I think that that's what separates the really amazing performers from the people who are all right. And I think that people say, do all the drag queens know their drag history? And I say the really good ones do. And it's true. And they do go back and look. And also every person on this show today and every great drag performer is someone who, to me, what's so fascinating is they're not only in love with some of these older performers, they're carrying the torch and carrying on the tradition of truly wanting to entertain an audience. Drag performers will do anything they have to do so every person in that audience leaves feeling better than when they walked in. And that's why they're doing shows online during this COVID pandemic, during quarantine, all of this. It's not just so they can have grocery money, although that helps, the Venmo. Right. But honestly, it's the call to arms. It's we need to do something, and here's what we do. We throw a party that leaves you feeling better an hour later.
Well, I think it's sort of like the old USO shows. That what can a performer do? Well, this is what I do. I'll do whatever I can. And I think Jimmy's been doing those. I've been watching his shows, and Jimmy, my favorite is Mother in the corner in the chair. When he pans over and his mother's in the chair dancing or tapping, sometimes he puts the headdress on her. I love that. It is a little bit like Psycho, but I love it nonetheless.
Thank you.
Is Mother watching us? Mother, where are you?
I was thinking
she's alive, though.
She is alive.
She's alive, yes.
But also, I want you guys to think about this, because I've thought about this, 35-year career now of this, being around drag and everything and doing drag myself. And that is that I believe and RuPaul is like paved a giant path for drag artists everywhere. But I feel that what drag does is it's a barometer like this, like to see if we are still living in a free society.
Right.
Because if we can get in drag and not be thrown off of a roof and not be put in jail for it, it's like, okay, it's still
We're still free.
We're good. We're still free. Yeah. So it's a great barometer of letting us know if we're in a free society.
Right. I agree with you. I'm going to bring in our other guests to join us. We'll do like the last 15 minutes. We'll just have everyone here. Let's see. We got Steven and we've got John Epperson. Okay. So I'd like to just go. I'm going to start with Jimmy up on the top right. Oh, there you go. Over there. Hi, everyone. That's Jimmy. So what is it that you still want to do as a performer? Because you've done everything.
Oh,
Jimmy.
Oh.
You were cutting out. I couldn't hear what you said.
That's okay, sweetie. I'm asking, what do you still want to do as a performer? Is there something that you haven't done that you want to do?
Oh my God, you're cutting out. I'm so
Jimmy,
sorry.
Jimmy, can you hear me? What do you want to do as a performer? What's left?
He may be on a delay.
Oh, basically entertain. Okay. That's really what I want to do. That's the basic bottom line.
Steven, is there something, sort of a goal that you've had that you haven't been able to do yet, Steven?
Yeah, I think I'd like to play a cop on a TV show. I mean, just to do something and then somebody would watch it and say, "You won't believe what else he does." But no, really, I think I said that before. I'd like to write a musical because that's my favorite thing I love the most, the musical. I'm obsessed, and I think I probably could write a good one with a lot of parts, not just for me, but for other great people like these two.
Well, you know, John, so I mentioned to you when I saw you in Black Swan, and I said, wow, he was so good in that. And that must have been something that you wanted to do in terms of your career, because it showed your piano, your love of dance and acting. Do you still have goals like that you want to achieve?
I definitely have goals. I'm reluctant to say what they are. But because there are things that I would like to do that I have not done yet. And one of them almost happened a couple of years ago, and then it didn't. I haven't given up.
I will say, John, I'm just going to interrupt because when you did The Passion of the Crawford, it was so fascinating to me to see you do a full show as one character that was also interactive. So that was something that was a pleasant surprise for me to see.
Well, I think of the other shows as one character, but just many different voices. The Joan Crawford show you're talking about was primarily Joan Crawford's voice. Yeah.
And it was just very specific. And I really, I enjoyed that because I didn't expect it. It was so different than the other shows. So, Frank, you've written the drag book. Do you have a book that you want to do? What is your next project?
The two goals that I have right now, there are two that I want to do. And John, I'm the opposite. I want to put it out there because I have this little kid fantasy that someone watching Billy Masters live is going to go, hey, let's call him this afternoon and get him. You know, I want to do a multi-part drag TV documentary on the history of drag, and I wanted to show clips like Jim Bailey performing on television in a primetime network Super Bowl preview special. That's the clip I need to see on television. He performs as A Star Is Born era Barbra Streisand in an open convertible, singing "Don't Rain on My Parade" to celebrate the Super Bowl. So that's the range thing I need. Also, and this is what I'm more easily working toward, is I want the next book to do to look at the history of the disco phenomenon, the way I looked at the drag explosion, to quote Linda Simpson, the drag explosion, and talk about that. I want to talk about how the disco suck movement really was the same as the MAGA movement, and that it was the gays and women and blacks are getting ahead of themselves. We've got to crush this. Because I do think there are parallels to now as there was to people trying to kill disco, because it was our show and not theirs. And so I want to look at that. Also, I want to write about the Ethel Merman disco album. So it's not all as high-minded as so it's like I really do want to write about things like the 3 Bee Gees lunchboxes and that are in the Smithsonian, and the Ethel Merman disco album, and Star Wars disco by Miko, and those kinds of things, and what happened to John Travolta's white suit over the years with Fever. Those guys. So those are the two projects that I really want to do. But I want to do a drag documentary. We're working toward that. But I have to say, I thought we would have sold it in the first week, and it's not found receptive audiences at places like Netflix where I thought it was a shoe-in, you know. And so we're getting the meetings, but they're not biting, and I find that a little disconcerting because this isn't Frank's weird idea for 3 people. This is like everybody's top of mind entertainment right at this moment. So you'd think that selling a drag documentary, but history is tough. People don't want to watch something that's smart. They want to watch someone sculpt turds and sell them or something. I mean, that's a new reality show that is a head scratcher to me. You know, it's like, really a show about sculpting turds or whatever they do with it. It's about turds. That's all I know. And I don't really want to be part of that. I would rather a cinematic turd is fun to put out there, but not a real one.
Right.
So,
Did you pitch the idea to? Did you pitch the idea to Netflix before or after AJ and the Queen?
During, I think, which may have not have helped. I don't know.
I think it didn't help. But actually, bringing up RuPaul's an interesting topic, because I had Lady Bunny on Tuesday, and I asked her. So I'm going to ask the panel, starting with Jimmy James, who hopefully can hear me. Would there had been talk of having a season of RuPaul Drag Race with legendary drag queens? Would any of you be receptive to competing in that kind of forum, Jimmy?
I could not. I can't hear you guys. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead, Frank. You do it.
Cutting out really bad.
Jimmy, would you compete? Would you compete in a RuPaul's Drag Race if it was all legends? If it was you and Bunny and Jackie Beat and Lypsinka up against each other, would you find that a good idea?
Oh, I would do everything in my power to murder those bitches.
Well, that was worth the wait. Steven Brinberg, what do you think? Would you do that?
I think it would be fun to work with all of these wonderful people, but competing, I don't know, that seems like, it's just doesn't seem necessary. I could see being like a guest judge or something like that maybe, but with all these great talented people, let the young ones scratch their eyes out. I don't know.
How about you, John?
I agree with Steven.
But
I'm not interested in
they don't
competing.
like old people on television. You know that, right?
Right, that's true. That is true. John, go ahead, John.
I agree with Steven. I'm not interested in competing. I think if World of Wonder did a variety show, that would be very interesting.
Yeah.
A variety special. I mean, not a show, but a special.
Hollywood Palace.
Something like the Hollywood Palace, right?
And Billy and I would host it, and
yes,
we welcome you. Yes.
Well,
legends want to be paid, and they want approvals.
Right. It's all right. So do hosts. It's fine. John, you have had such a huge career, and I've seen you perform in like the most amazing places. Is there something that you look back on as the high point of your career thus far in terms of live performing?
Well, I don't know that there's any one thing. The first time Lily Tomlin and I performed together at the Castro Theater in San Francisco, that was pretty great.
Yeah.
Then a year later, I did a show at Irving Plaza for one night here in New York, and you would have thought I was Lena Horne the way the audience responded. So, gosh, there have been the thing I did at Lincoln Center with Eartha Kitt. That was
Cinderella, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There have been so many to choose from. Let me ask Steven. Steven, was there a high point that you say, wow?
The first one that I did with Margaret Hamlish, and I did a whole bunch of shows with him all over the country. And to come out there and be with him and have an 80-piece orchestra behind me while I'm singing, it was like being shot out of a cannon, It's amazing. Still amazing to me that I got to do that for 11 years off and on.
Oh, now I think we've lost Jimmy James. He's gone. Frank, you have done some enormous things. I mean, you've been on network television, you've been on game shows, you've done a live performance, open for Lisa Lampanelli. Was there a high point for you that you said, wow, I can't believe that I've done this?
Most recently, I think the thing that blew me away was getting to open for Lisa Lampanelli at the Beacon Theater in New York. because you're standing on a stage that, you know, the Rolling Stones have played, and so that was a big deal to do a half an hour of comedy in front of those folks. And also my time on The Daily Show was 6.5 years, three before Jon Stewart arrived and 3.5 after he arrived. And that was really amazing. But even though I'm a nostalgic person, I don't believe in glory days. I'm always thinking something new and wonderful is just around the corner. So
Sure.
that some other fun thing will capture my attention and harness my energy, and I'll get to do it. But as made me laugh when Jimmy said about they don't let old people on television. It is funny. We would all be ready to play Miss Jane Pittman at this point. You know, like, God forbid you should be someone middle-aged and not have grandchildren. You know, or something. But it's an odd time. But, you know, you can't get bitter, and you have to just keep moving forward. And you know, and it's not always easy to do. There are times, you know, they'll do say I don't know. Hypothetically, they might do a history of gay representation on television, and your 6.5 years on The Daily Show will not be mentioned. That could happen.
Of course it could.
Hypothetically, but no. But that, you know, you just have to not get too bitter about when you're left out, and know that you know, if we made someone laugh today, one person, you're done. You know, if you made one kid saw your show and they were like, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm going to become an impersonator of Britney Spears.
Or I'm going to go online and look up Jimmy James or John Epperson or Steven Brinberg and really.
Or me or you.
Well, exactly. We got comments. We don't have Jimmy James back, but that, you know, mother. What can I tell you? So we have a friend of all of ours, Marga Gomez, says, Lypsinka, I love you. Hi, Marga.
Marga was in that show that Lily and I did together in '93.
Yeah, and Marga and I go back a long way. So thank you for watching, Marga. I love it. Let's see, who do we have here? I'm looking. Let's see. Oh my God. Okay, so somebody says Frank and Billy Masters. Yay! So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Yes.
Byron, of course, did also mention Diva wasn't mentioned in his book, apropos of what Frank just said. You know, you can't make everyone happy.
No, yes. Which diva was not mentioned? Who did I leave out?
He had a character named Diva.
Oh yeah, no. The word diva is used many times in the book, so definitely you're just assume I forgot to capitalize it and I meant you.
Exactly. It was all about you know. And so speaking of Mama, who we all know and who is in your book, Worthy wrote, great to see everyone. And Mama will be with me co-hosting next Thursday for our virtual LA Pride. David Fink says, I have booked Jimmy James and Steven Brinberg. So excited to see them here. Well, apparently Frank, John, and I did make the cut. Thanks, David.
And Marga told us he said the other three can go suck it, is what Marga wrote. I saw it. It was there.
Oh, well, you know.
He didn't say that.
Oh, Frank, somebody said, Rocky says he loves the audio version with Lady Bunny.
Okay, we're on CD and everything. Not only are you downloading it on Audible, but Bunny and I are on CD. It made me. I had to order it. I had to pay for it. My own stupid book. I had to order it, but I had to have it. I've never been on CD before, and so there are Bunny and I on CD. So yeah, they decided that Bunny should do all the drag voices, and I'll just do the me voice. And so that's what the book, the audio book, is all about. And if I can plug this, in 1996, I wrote a book called Boy Named Phyllis, a Suburban Memoir, and it was about growing up gay in New Jersey. And it was out of print for 20 years. And it was called a pioneering queer memoir. That's what the kids call it now. And I finally recorded it, so it's Audible. So the story of being a big sissy and growing up in New Jersey in the 60s and 70s, which is really my favorite thing I've ever done. It's out on Audible as an audiobook, and I finally got to read it after all these years. And it's funny and Italian and dirty and queer, and page, I think it's 177, is filthy. Yeah, one page, but it's really dirty, and my mother was embarrassed, but that happened.
Wow. We all embarrass our mothers in one way or another.
We
John,
tried.
I'm going to ask John. John, how are you doing during this pandemic? And were you supposed to be working at this point?
Well, I'm doing fine. I am in the epicenter.
You are
the Epperson epicenter. But as long as the weather is good, I've been going out. I was supposed to go to London and perform in March, and that got canceled.
Yep.
I was, even before things started closing down, I said to the presenter in London, I said, I don't want to come all the way there and then find out I can't get back. But even worse than that, I don't want to come there and work very hard and have only 10 people in the audience because the public is afraid to come.
Sure.
And he, at that point, he didn't think any of this would happen. And then a few days later, it did.
What about you, Steven? Steven, were you supposed to be doing anything at this point, and how are you doing during this?
Yeah, I have a lot of stuff booked that's all, postponed indefinitely, so that's a bummer. And I'm, managing somehow. I have a lot to watch and listen to while I can't go to the theater or the movies, which is kind of like being in rehab for me. So it's interesting, it's the world we're in.
I know. Frank, did you have something you were supposed to be doing at this point that you're not able to do?
I'm supposed to be sitting and working at my computer, but I don't even do that. I watched all 6 seasons of Downton Abbey and the movie in about 9 days. I mean, it was 40 some hours and a movie, and so I'm doing things like that and cooking and thinking of something to make my husband laugh and going in the other room and telling him, And
you keep posting pictures of things you have cooked. I am gaining weight just looking at your Facebook.
Yeah, well, I'm gaining weight just cooking it. It's my ass is huge, and I've lost 105 pounds. And it's like some of it's found its way home. This is the baked ziti over here. This is the tamale pie. This is the daily Aperol spritzer down here. So, but we've been doing well. When people are complaining about the curfew and stuff, I sort of feel it's like, where the fuck were you going anyway? It's sort of like, it's like stay home and watch TV, read a book, cook something, play with the dog. Make a fun thing and post it on Instagram. I just think there's, quit your complaining and start putting some good out there and some positive energy. And
I want to mention one comment. This will be just the last comment, but it's interesting. It's something we've all talked about, which is being on this show. It can expose people to things they had never seen before. And Rocky Durand, who has been watching this show regularly, just wrote, Steven, your Barbra sensational. I've never seen her before, but now I'm a fan.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
So, again, I hope that all of you watching have been exposed to the fabulousness of our guests. I am loath to say things like this, but I will say that you three are really my Everest. I will put Charles Bush in that equation as well, of people who I have known. And I'm not even talking about drag performing, female performing. I'm talking any performing. As performers, you are four, with Jimmy, James, and Charles, 4 of the greatest performers I have ever seen. And the amount of joy you have given me and the world is immeasurable. And I just want to thank you for coming on our little show.
Thank you so much.
And Frank, of course, Frank has given me more pleasure than I'm allowed to talk about.
I put that rubber glove on every day. I do. I'm just thrilled and delighted to do it and give you that thrill. I have to say, it's an honor to be in this company. These are people who are as talented gets, and under all our behind all the bon mots and the sometimes hard exteriors, we're all a bunch of pussycats, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be in this group. So thank you for having me.
Well, and I should just say before we sign off that I don't think people know, because there is this perception of competition and bitchiness and cattiness and anything. We're all actually friends. I mean, we all, if we, you can't fake stuff. Well, we can. I've faked so many things, but I mean, I haven't had anybody on the show that I don't genuinely love, and I love all of you, and people should know that this is a little bit of a community, and we're very fortunate to be a part of it.
We definitely respect even if we don't say we're friends. You know, that 2 o'clock in the morning. You've got to talk me off the ledge. Even if we're not at that level with each other, we certainly respect each other and know that we want nothing but the best for everyone on here, and know they deserve as much and probably lots more fame than they've been accorded.
Well, I wanted to say about John Epperson. John didn't know me. We knew each other through reputation. And I showed up at a show and we were both gushing about the other one. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, Lypsinka knows who I am. I was just so thrilled. And again, the same thing. The first time I saw Steven, I went, what in God's name am I watching? And so these are people that I have admired for years, and I am pleased to consider colleagues and friends. So just I know I'm going to stop gushing. Thank you all for being on the show. I really appreciate it. John Epperson, thank you so much. We will talk soon. Steven Brinberg, of course, I adore you. Simply Barbra.
And thanks, Frank, for having me in the book. It's such a great book.
Thank you so much.
And Frank DeCaro, my little co-host. Yes, oh yes. Mine is in LA. I wish I had it with me. I do have a photo of us though, both holding them up. I think with us, Melissa. I think Melissa's in the picture with us. God, I should have had her on. But Frank DeCaro, I adore. He's like a brother from another mother. And he will be back on, what did I say? June 25th, Thursday, June 25th, with some of the RuPaul drag queens.
And a certain one named for the 49th state, too, is going to be with us.
Alaska is
going
to be with us. And, there are other people. I haven't told you who the guests are. I hope they know.
Don't surprise me.
Well, you'll end up seeing when I promote it. But anyway, Frank, thank you for being here. I love you. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. Continued success, and thanks for putting out all the good vibes that you always do. Oh, and follow me at Frank DeCaro Show on social media. Thank you.
And thank you. And also hi to Jim. I have to say hi to Jim Clute.
I will. Well, I'm going to go make it lunch now.
All right. Well, send me something.
Okay.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everyone. And everyone, thank you for watching Billy Masters Live. Do not forget that, again, shows Tuesday, tribute to Joan Rivers with Charles Bush, Frank Marino, and Jackie Beat, and others, I'm sure. Next Thursday, virtual LA Pride with Mama and some special guests. And do not forget that we need people to help us with our social media. So if you're a social media whiz, email me, billy@billymasters.com. And also go to YouTube, please. Forget about Facebook. Go to YouTube and click right there on that button that says subscribe to Billy. And please, it helps us out a great deal. We really need your help, and we love bringing you these shows. So for all of us here at Billy Masters Live, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. Be safe. And just remember, if we're here, we're live. Bye-bye.